Welcome to this episode of This Week in Hockey East. We have a really important game this week. We're going to get to a lot here in the first segment and talk about it throughout the show. A milestone in the history of Boston sports as the final game at Matthews Arena is set for this Saturday between Boston University and Northeastern. The men take the ice for one final time at the historic rink. Eric, I know we've talked about it over the last few weeks, but it kind of doesn't feel real that it's actually here. And that's kind of what this whole week has been about, just kind of acclimating, coming to terms, bringing people back together, getting everyone that final go around and talking about a lot of memories at this rink.
Yeah, it was cool seeing it was like 50 former coaches and important people in the Boston hockey community who were at Matthews a couple days ago taking a final skate together. It really is amazing. And again, as you said, we've talked about this, but the thing that really stands out about the building is that there's so many different cross sections of things that are so important in the city of Boston that originate at Matthews Arena, right? Going back to 1910, it's the oldest indoor hockey building still in use in the world. I always like what Bernie Corbett, the voice of the Terriers, says. It's the ancestral home of the Terriers. It's the ancestral home of all these different things, right? The Bruins started there. The Celtics started there. The Carolina Hurricanes started there as the New England Whalers, and then eventually the Hartford Whalers. Each of the local college hockey programs in Boston all played their early games there. The first Beanpot tournament was there, as we talked about. You could go back to all these famous political rallies, right, with Teddy Roosevelt and the Bull Moose Party and William Howard Taft and all that stuff. But the thing that I think stands out more than anything is just the number of, guys that you talk to who said, yeah, I played high school hockey there, or I played youth hockey games there. And, those formative years of playing hockey in this in this city, even the graduation ceremonies that were there. So there's all this stuff that goes back through this building. And obviously there's a lot of, pretty significant memories there that it's worth, talking about. We understand it's going to be replaced. It's going to be a great building that's there, but there are all these significant notes that are going to, run through that building. And obviously it's worth, kind of bringing up and discussing.
Yeah, we talked to Vinny Borghese about it last week on the show. I've talked to coaches throughout this week just about their favorite moments. And it's been a week of memories, reminiscing, bringing a lot of people back together to the rink, like I mentioned. And the Northeastern women celebrated their win in their final game at Matthews Arena in front of over 100 alumni, including Alina Mueller and Aaron Frankel from the Boston Fleet, Kendall Coyne-Schofield from the Minnesota Frost. And you see that's the coaches that all got together this week, and they're able to just share that last time on the ice, and the men will have a similar situation in the building this Saturday.
Yeah, so it'll be really, emotional. It'll be exciting. But the thing is, the game's really important. And it's worth discussing here a little bit when Northeastern, who got off to this wonderful start to the season, they're holding their spot right now in the top 15 at the NPI. But if you can't necessarily do things in a vacuum, as we talk about all the time. But if they were to lose this game, they're out of the NCAA tournament picture, despite all of their good work in the first half. So trying to put a capper on the first half of the season against a BU team that this is one of their last opportunities in terms of key road games. You have Harvard starting the second half to try to jump up and build a little bit of momentum going into the second half of the season. So just like kind of crucial in terms of the game itself as well. Bridgette, you saw Northeastern last week. They ended up splitting with UMass, including dropping that Sunday game.
Yeah, they won their first two games of the season series. It's going to be a 4-game series this year. They meet quite a bit between UMass and Northeastern, but they lost that Sunday game 2-0 at Matthews Arena. I was surprised they didn't score in the third period of that game. They outshot UMass 21-4 in the third, and they just seemed like they were coming and testing Jackson Irving, who was in net instead of Robble for that night. But he obviously had a great game, kept them scoreless in what was a good final push for them. So they head in probably hungry for a little bit of redemption at their home rink, but also wanting to win the final game there, obviously in the same fashion that the women did this past weekend. And you look at the play of Dylan Ritzkovian. He's a guy I think will be key in this game. He's somebody who had a lot of chances in that last game against UMass. He leads Northeastern with 9 goals, 9 assists in 15 games this season. He leads Hockey East in points per game. And he's driving a line with 2 freshmen on it. He's got 7 points in his last 4 games, so things are really coming, and you're seeing him be a leader, and you're seeing him just take steps even more so than he already has as a junior. It just feels like they're more of a balanced lineup this year as well, the way they're able to spread out their talent. And Lawton Zacher coming back from injury recently is big for them as well. He remains the top goalie in terms of save percentage in the country. So he's going to be back in net for that final game, and he's been really good this season.
Yeah, quickly on the BU side of things, they split at home with Vermont last week. Oddly enough, they've actually struggled with their scoring a little bit here recently. Outside of the 4-3 win in overtime against Northeastern back November 22nd, they've scored just 2 goals in 5 of their last 6 games. So I think their defense has actually settled down a little bit, but now it's about finding some of that offense again here, Bridgette. And I know that's something that Jay Pandolfo's talked about the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's talked about the offense needs to get going, but Mikhail Yegorov, he thinks, is playing a little bit better in his net. He says he's noticing he has some of that presence that he had last season when they went on that tournament run to the championship game. And they've been dealing with injuries, right? Some of the scoring has come from that. They've been shorthanded in their forwards. They've been rolling 9 to 10 forwards pretty much every game over the last 2 weeks. So they're looking to get a little healthier. Not sure if they're going to get Ben Merrill back or Conrad Fondrick back, or even Owen McLaughlin. So we'll see if they get a little healthier, what that can do to their lineup.
Yeah, it should be a really interesting game. Coming up, we're going to transition to another huge game this weekend. The UNH Wildcats coming off their sweep of Maine. We're going to talk with UNH head coach Mike Souza ahead of a big game against the #1 team in the NPI. That is next here on This Week in Hockey East. Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. It's time to bring in our guest today, who's presented by the Boston Harbor Hotel. Plan your getaway today at bostonharborhotel.com and experience Boston's best waterfront views. We're joined by the head coach of the UNH Wildcats, Mike Souza, whose team just went up and swept Maine at Alfond Arena. Coach, appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for joining us. It always has to be special, I'm sure, going up to Alfond, getting a sweep over your rivals. Just take us through that weekend and how proud you are of your team.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. It was a great weekend for the program. Most importantly, getting 6 huge league points. Tough place to play, as you know. You were there, so tough place to play. We were leaking oil a little bit there on Friday night. Stuck with it, 5-on-6 situation, then found ourselves in the exact same situation the next night. Saw the game through, got some big saves, and now we're on to Dartmouth.
I was going to ask, in that first period, Maine got off to that start. But again, so many of their chances weren't necessarily on goal early, which is one of the things that you guys do so well when things are going right. What was kind of the messaging on the bench, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes into that first period that allowed you guys to settle down, get into the game, and eventually go on to get the victory?
I mean, one of the things about playing up there, as you know, there's always a flurry in that first 5 to 8 minutes, always up there. And we had talked to our team about that. As a coach, you're trying to weather that, get through that, ideally try to, create some chances for yourself. But we found ourselves under siege early and survived. And, the game settled in, and I thought our kids settled in. It was first experience for a lot of our players up there. So it was a unique experience. One of the great rivalries in all of college sports. People always reference, college hockey. I think it's one of the great rivalries in all of college sports.
You're in the midst of a 4-game win streak right now. What trends have you seen from your team that have contributed to the success you've had recently?
I think we're learning. We're growing. Here we're on the other side of Thanksgiving. We've had some ups and some downs. We struggled to win on Saturday nights for a while there. Some immaturity in our game. I hope we're on the other side of that. We've seen a lot of growth from our young D-core. Gotten solid goaltending for the most part all year from both Kyle Chevette and then Jerry Whale stepping in big time down at UConn. So you know what, we're growing, and I'm a big believer in you grow through winning. People love to talk about growing through losing, but I think that growing through winning is the best way to go about it. And I hope our guys realize some of the things they've done over the last few weeks are the reasons we've been successful, and hopefully we can sustain that moving forward.
Mike, just going back to the first weekend of the year, it feels such a long time ago now, but going out to Michigan State, getting a victory in that first game, how important was that to just kind of setting the season off on the right foot?
Yeah, I think it was huge. I mean, I think it showed a standard that we could play to if we played the right way, and things went our way that night. We got a little bit of a fluke goal early, and I thought our kids defended and played hard that night, and we got solid goaltending that weekend. So that was sort of the standard and set us on our way. And some ups and downs since, but it's all about the next one. And for us, the next one is really big.
You mentioned goaltending twice just now. I want to talk a little bit about goalkeeper Kyle Chevette. Can you just describe his style of play and what he's brought for you guys this season? He's been pretty good recently.
Yeah, he's a kid. He's got a lot of experience, played a lot of hockey at Union. Not a flashy goalie. He makes the saves he's supposed to make, and once in a while the ones he's not supposed to make, like he did on Saturday late in the game. So just a solid veteran presence in the net. As I mentioned, not flashy. He's very diligent in his approach, and he's been a really hardworking kid. He's acclimated himself well. It's a great story. He's a New Hampshire kid, familiar with our program for a long time. So happy to see him playing well.
Mike, we talked a little bit about this offline last week, but you guys brought in a bunch of guys from major juniors, which is obviously one of the big things we've been talking about in college hockey this year. There's obviously a geographic element that makes sense based on where you guys are. Can you just talk about the decision to bring some of those guys in and the impact you feel like they've had for your team early in the season?
Yeah, of course. So we were trying to obviously improve our roster any way we could. And you mentioned the Maritimes. A lot of kids from the Maritimes. There's Maine, then there's New Hampshire, where I guess the next stop, right? So we were familiar with some of the kids, as you and I have talked about before, from recruiting them prior to them signing and playing major junior. Sam Oliver comes to mind. He was on a visit here years and years ago, but being familiar with Jacob Newcomb and Alex Carr through various contacts that we had, like all the programs do, but sort of trying to get on those guys early. And those guys have acclimated themselves very well into our culture. I mean, a year plus ago, they weren't thinking about going to college. Here they find themselves in a dorm, dining halls, all these practices. We practice all the time. We don't play all that many games, but I think they've adjusted well, and they're all fantastic kids.
We want to get a little bit into that matchup with Dartmouth a little bit later. But first, I wanted to talk to you about your involvement with the U.S. Collegiate Selects at the Spengler Cup. You're going to be an assistant coach there. Can you talk us through what the roster selection process was like, and what have you enjoyed about being part of that process so far?
Yeah, so there was an early criteria that set the roster up to give us 6 or 8 guys, the returning All-Americans to college hockey. And then it was a matter of us just huddling up every Sunday night, using contacts. We've had sort of an extended scouting staff of some NHL scouts, using our contacts around college hockey, talking to coaches. We've met as a staff every week, and we're trying to build the most competitive roster we can. Some guys, due to obligations with their teams, that maybe would be on the roster, aren't coming. But we're really, really confident in our group and excited to coach some of the more talented players in all of college hockey. It'll be fun. It's an experience of a lifetime. But the selection process was unique. I mean, it wasn't certainly not a perfect science. I'm sure there's guys that could be on the team that maybe weren't selected. We're hoping to put the most competitive team on the ice that we can, so that not only do our guys have an incredible experience, have an opportunity to win the tournament, we would like to get invited back and really showcase college hockey. And we've got a first-class group of coaches and staff, and it's been a lot of fun and a great honor to be a part of it.
Well, you played your part of your career, your playing career overseas in Switzerland and in Italy. So obviously you have a little bit of experience over there. When I was looking through your bio and it said you played in Cortina, it popped a question in my mind. What are your thoughts on the Olympics being there? I haven't been someone that's played there, and maybe is there something we don't know about the hockey culture, the hockey community in Italy? What is that tournament going to look like, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Italy doesn't probably get a lot of recognition for its hockey, but as people think of the boot, but I always say it's like a piece of broccoli. So as you get up into the Dolomites, there's some great hockey towns and great hockey villages. And I was fortunate to play over there for a while and play on the Italian national team and be a part of that. And really, Cortina ironically hosted the '56 Olympics. So there's a great history there of the Olympic Games, but also hockey tradition in northern Italy in particular. And so I hope they get all the facilities finished. The Italians, you never know. We'll get it done at the 11th hour, certainly. But it'll be a great experience for all the countries that are participating. They'll be spread out. Milano and Cortina are good 4+ hours apart. So, but what a place to play. And I was very fortunate. Went to Switzerland for a year and ended up staying over there for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. It was one of the more unique experiences I've ever had in hockey.
Mike, quickly before we let you go, we'll talk about the NPI implications of playing Dartmouth and all of that. But just, how big a game is this, and how big for the state of New Hampshire to see both teams doing so well, and how much are you looking forward to Sunday?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Reed's done a great job. They're a well-constructed team from the goal on out. Top defender in Foley and Stavrov's got a goal game. And so they're good in all areas. They defend really well. They defend hard, and then they can score. So, what we're worried about UNH, we're worried about playing well and doing the things that we've done over the last few weeks to manage our own game. We're all about trying to find that level of consistency and the Big Green's obviously off to a great start. It's going to be a real tough test for us on Sunday afternoon for sure.
We appreciate your time, Mike. Good luck this weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
That's Mike Souza, the head coach of New Hampshire. We'll continue on with our show after this.
Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. It's time to go around Hockey East, presented by Boston Children's Hospital, the official children's hospital of Hockey East. Boston Children's, where the world comes for answers. More to get into with that UNH Dartmouth game like we were just talking about with Mike Souza. Eric, can you elaborate a little bit more on UNH's wins last weekend in Orono?
Yeah, I think, what he was talking about was really the craziest thing, right? Maine got off to such a good start in that game on Friday, and they got off to a pretty good start again on Saturday. There was a power play attempt too, but what New Hampshire does when they're going right is that even when you have this flurry, it doesn't all end up on goal, right? They push you to the outside. They force the shots to come from the blue line. And so, you look at the numbers, it was like 25% of Maine's attempts ended up on goal. And so that's why UNH was able to kind of weather it, to settle in. And then, eventually Cam McDonald scores the 1 goal on Friday. I'll talk about him in a second. And, they score some more even in the game that they were down on Saturday. So I was just so impressed how New Hampshire kind of stuck to their structure so well and did the things they needed to do to pull off another road victory.
Yeah, and maybe not one guy in particular that jumps out at the top of the card for UNH, but what a weekend for Cam McDonald. He scored the lone goal on Friday, had 2 assists Saturday, and he's a 5th-round pick of the Lightning. He's a bit of an older freshman, but he was starting to really get his skates under him this past weekend. And we talked a little bit about Kyle Chevette as well with Coach Souza, and we usually do the Service Credit Union scoring leader, but this week, let's do the Service Credit Union scoring stopper. He has been really doing a great job in his efforts at Maine in particular. His last 3 games, all on the road, he's allowed just 2 goals. He had 2 shutouts and stopped 71 of 73 shots.
Yes. How about New Hampshire now 7-3 on the road this year. They have the win against Michigan State. They have a win against UConn. They have 2 wins at Maine, and now they get this opportunity against Dartmouth. UNH already moved up 14 spots last week alone for their sweep of Maine, so they're in the conversation. And, Dartmouth now, it feels like it's not just this early season Ivy League bump anymore. They're 10-0. They're still number 1 in the NPI. It feels like they're far enough ahead of, that group at the top 3 feels far enough ahead that they're not just going to drop all of a sudden, especially if they keep playing as well as they have. So this is a huge, huge opportunity for New Hampshire here. And I think that's what we look at this time of year, right? The opportunities that are available, whether it's BC over the holidays playing against a Western Michigan, even though they're going to be shorthanded, whether it's a Maine going out to Denver the first week of January. There's all these chances to potentially move up, but you got to take advantage of them. And this is a huge one. It's great for the state of New Hampshire, and we can't wait to watch it on Sunday. Dartmouth, number 1 in the NPI, against this really red-hot New Hampshire team, which will help wrap up the first half. We'll talk more about the first half and kind of put a bow on things when we come back on This Week in Hockey East. Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. This is the final week of the first half, the pseudo first half before we go into holiday break. We looked at some of the best players on the women's side last week. We figured we'd do the same on the men's side before we go. Bridgette, let's just start to talk about some possibilities. It feels like there's a player of the year race here in Hockey East that could be pretty wide open.
Yeah, we couldn't really narrow this one down yet because it seems like there's a lot of guys competing for it right now. And Jack Musa for UMass was somebody that came to mind for me. He's the leading point scorer in Hockey East at this point in the season, 21 points on 8 goals and 13 assists. He's extremely consistent so far. I think that's what makes him one of those leading candidates. He's got points in 14 of his 18 games played so far.
Yeah, I think he's a really good candidate. I think you have to talk about the Boston College guys, right? The Bruins guys. James Hagen's 10 goals, has really done everything you could have hoped for this year. Now being a little bit more of a driver, the shot stands out. The hat trick against Notre Dame certainly stands out. It'll be fun to watch him at World Juniors. And then Dean Letourneau, right? This has gone beyond just, hey, good story, hey, exciting prospect. I feel like if you use the real term of most valuable player, I know that's not what the award technically is, he's way up there in terms of what he's done for Boston College. He feels like one of, if not the best players on the ice every time BC takes the ice. And it's such a credit to what he's done this year.
Yeah, watch out for Dean this year, right? And then another guy I want to mention, Dylan Ritzkovian, Hockey East leader in points per game, averaging 1.2 points per game this season. He's extremely important to his team in his junior season, and he's been one of the more consistent players as well. Northeastern hasn't played quite as many games, so that's why you look at the averages for him, and he's right up there.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the rookies, and I think this could even be a rookie or a player of the year conversation, depending on what happens with Justin Poirier as things keep going through. He has led the Hockey East in goals. He led it by a decent amount earlier this year. Some guys have caught up, but, jumped up with that hat trick in his debut against Holy Cross. He's been such a good scorer, 5-by-5, and on the power play. No reason to think he's going to stop anytime soon.
Another rookie that looks like they're doing really well so far, Vaslav Nestrasil from UMass, 10 goals, 10 assists in 18 games played. And his head coach, Greg Carvel, said he competes hard, he creates energy, he doesn't get tired, and he's got a really impressive skill set. He's got 20 points already this season, and he leads all Hockey East rookies in that category.
Yeah, I think he's the impressive one. You could maybe talk about a Luca Cloutier here if he keeps playing as well as he has, and that kind of transitions us into the goalies, where Lawton Zacher certainly has been the guy, Bridgette.
Yeah, Lawton Zacher, best save percentage in the nation. Transfer from Brown to Northeastern this offseason. Jerry Keefe told me that they thought he was the best goalie available in the transfer portal, and the Huskies goalie coach Brian Mahoney-Wilson told me that after watching a lot of his tape, he said, we knew he was going to be a great fit, and he's one of the most competitive players that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of guys you can throw in here, right? Muslik stands out for UConn, doing it basically all on his own. Austin Elliott has sneaky been really good. Svedback's been pretty good, so that'll be an interesting one. And then on D, maybe just a quick thought about Cole Hudson, Bridgette.
Yeah, Cole Hudson once again seems to be the front runner. Boasts the second most points per game of any Hockey East player. He's already been the Hockey East Defender of the Month twice in October and November, off to another good start.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun to watch what happens here. So we're going to be off now for a little bit. We'll be back with you the first week of January, so make sure to tune in. Spengler Cup, December 26th to December 31st in Switzerland. 6 Hockey East guys participating there. World Juniors, as we know, December 26th through January 5th in St. Paul, Minnesota. Bunch of Hockey East guys involved in the U.S. team in terms of on a coaching staff as well, and some of the other teams as well. How about Hockey Canada taking a bunch of college guys? That never happens. So exciting stuff. Hope you enjoy it. We'll talk to you on the other side in January for the stretch run here on This Week in Hockey East.